The last 8 verses of the entire Torah describe the death of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, the Talmud, the Gemara, asks a question. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the whole Torah. But how can Moshe Rabbeinu wrote that Moshe died? If he died, then he couldn't have written it. And if he didn't die yet and he's writing it, then it's not true. And Torah is the Torah of truth. So there are 2 explanations given in the Talmud. Explanation number 1, Moshe did not write the last 8 verses. Moshe wrote the whole Torah except for those 8 verses. Those, Yehoshua, Joshua, his student, wrote. But the second explanation of the Talmud is that Moshe did write it. Hashem told him what to write, and Moshe wrote it with tears. Now, how does that answer the question? Explanation number 1, we understand. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't have wrote it, so when we say Moshe wrote the whole Torah, he wrote all of it except that last little bit which he couldn't have written. But the second answer, which tries saying that Moshe wrote it, but it's fine if he wrote it because he wrote it with tears and what God was telling him, he wrote it bidema, which means tears. How does that answer the question? He's writing something that didn't happen yet, so those psukim can't be true. So the Baal Shem Tov actually gives a very creative explanation to this and says that Moshe haya kaisvan bidema, which means Moshe wrote them with tears, doesn't need to be translated as tears. It could be translated as Moshe wrote them. Bidema could also mean midamea, to mean mixed up, mumble-jumbled. That Hashem told Moshe what to write, and Moshe wrote them in an incoherent way. He had all the letters over there. Vav, Va, Yamas, Shom, Moshe. He put all those letters together, but in a way that couldn't be deciphered and couldn't be given context. After Moshe passed away, those letters took shape, took meaning, and we saw what those psukim meant. So did Moshe Rabbeinu write about his own death? Well, sort of. He put the words over there, but only later did they come into context. So therefore he did write the whole Torah, but in a way that it wasn't a clash with reality. Alternatively, or perhaps accordingly, we could also say that according to the Baal Shem Tov, or according to this explanation, answer number 2 complements answer number 1. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the words bidema incoherently. We couldn't yet see what was happening. We couldn't see what they meant. After he passed away, Yehoshua, his student, was the one that gave them context and wrote down the psukim in a way that means that Moshe passed away, and the way Torah ends off. Answer number 2 is not a separate answer from answer number 1. Rather, it complements answer number 1. Yehoshua wrote it down, but Moshe Rabbeinu also wrote it down. So Moshe wrote the entire Torah. Incoherently, after he passed away, Yehoshua took those last psukim, which were encrypted in code and all mumble-jumbled, mixed together. Not broken up and broken down, and Yehoshua was the one that gave them context. What does this mean? For this year's Simchas Torah, I think this is an important message. Because we're coming off of last year's Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah, October 7th, when the Hamas terrorists attacked Israel, killed many Jews, and what turned out to be a big tragedy. And oftentimes we ask, when this happens, where do we go from here? And this perhaps is what the Baal Shem Tov, we could learn from what the Baal Shem Tov says. Certain events in our lives, we write with words. We could articulate. We know how to give them context. But certain things that happen in our lives aren't written with words, but they're written bidema, with tears, or with a mumble-jumble. It's just written with confusion. What now? And oftentimes, when such things happen, we can only find context, and we can only find condolence, and we can only find meaning after the fact. After what happens, take the next day, the October 8th, in order to give context and say, look what we made out of that day. And coming after last year's October 7th, the Jewish people stand prouder, more unified than perhaps ever before in the recent past, in recent history. And many more Jews have been awakened. Their Yechidah Shebenefesh, the Jewish soul, had become aroused and awakened across the whole spectrum of all types of Jewish people. And we need to remember this for this year's Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. Yes, last year was confusing. It was bidema. There were tears, and there was incoherentness. But a Jew is like Joshua, able to make context out of such days and give them meaning, give them hope, and turn the negativity of the dema, turn the negativity of the confusion and the tears into something positive, into the end and finality of the entire Torah. So this year, obviously, we have to be happy. We have to notice the positive, think positive, be hopeful, and trust in Hashem. And the experience of the past, we need to give them, it's on us, the Joshuas, to give them good, holy context, and to take those confused psukim and those tears, and to be able to turn them into coherent psukim of Torah, verses of light and verses of positivity for now and for the rest of the year. Have a great Yom Tov and a great Shabbos.